Hey everybody, welcome to the third and final part of the Lilyth review slash deep dive. Today we're going to cover what I like to call the Leonis Bouncer build. Now it's actually kind of funny how I stumbled upon this, but let's kind of go through it so you guys can see how I got to this. Okay, so you may not have noticed, but I sure did. In my first video where I was using King Mont to tank and sort of had Lilyth behind, I noticed that he kind of took a lot of damage. And that was from Tifa. So if you could see here, basically he's got 9,000 HP in the top left, and on the top right you see where he kind of started. So Tifa actually did a two-hit chain there, two-hit combo. She hit for basically a total of 5,000. So if she kind of does that twice, that's basically a two-shot on King Mont. So I remember seeing this before, and actually if we looked at the cast of the Fire team members, you can kind of see a commonality between pretty much all of them. So if we look at the strike resistance of each unit, so King Mont is supposed to be, you know, the best tank in the game probably. He's got a -10 resistance. Rain has a -30. These are kind of like the sort of the more like physical, except for Rain, like the more physical attackers. Rain is kind of a tank, so it's kind of surprising to see this. And even if we scroll down to Raldor, he's got neutral, but you would think that someone who's a up close and personal fighter, that he would have like some kind of strike resistance. But you can see that in total, like everyone here is actually pretty bad. And if we look at the magic users, it pretty much gets worse, with the worst one being Naya. So there's like this commonality of every fire unit just having like ridiculous strike weakness for some reason. And then to round it all off, the only other person that has neutral is Luartha. And then even the future units that we're gonna get in fire, they both have a strike weakness. So this is something that I kind of noticed after I kind of looked at Lilyth and saw like, oh, she actually has strike resistance. So the only other person in the game that has strike resistance is, of course, Seymour. Of course, in the first video, I kind of let him take some of the thunder away from Lilyth. But if you can remember from that video, in terms of stats, Seymour doesn't really have any defense or spirit, and Lilyth has more HP, more HP slash defense buffs and stuff. She also has reflex and sword guard. So, and she also has a little bit more defense. I think she has 8 built-in defense. So we're gonna give this to Lilyth, obviously. So as I kind of saw this, like, oh, I was like, maybe there's something I can do with this. You know, 15 strike resistance, that's got to be there for some reason. So I kind of started looking around, and I noticed that something is that the Encounter of Heroes card actually gives strike attack resistance up 15 for the person that's holding it. And so I kind of just kept looking and looking, and I kind of remembered another thing. Lamia Queen gives strike attack resistance for fire party team members, and for the Encounter of Heroes, that only applies to the person that's holding it if they are fire. So it clearly looks to me like they kind of did this to sort of make up for the strike resistance weakness that the fire units have, which makes sense. But as we can see here in our little progress tracker at the bottom right, Lilyth actually benefits from this pretty nicely. So with these two cards combined, if she has the Encounter of Heroes equipped and another member is holding the Lamia Queen, she will have a total of 45 strike resistance. Now I started looking around what other kind of strike resistance is in the game, and so the next thing I found was actually the Phoenix Esper. So let me get my face out of the way for a second. And if you see on the right side of Phoenix, it actually has a total of 25% strike resistance. So that brings up Lilyth to a whopping 70%. So let me bring my face back, and then let's find there is one other piece of strike resistance that Lilyth could equip. and that would be the mithril armor. So I actually don't have a +5, I have a +3, but you can kind of see what the stats, I superimpose the stats on top of the +7 strike resistance. So what ends up happening with all of these things combined, all of these options combined, Lilyth actually gets up to a whopping 77% strike resistance. Now, in terms of the highest strike resistance in the game, she is actually the second highest. If we look here, let me hide my face again. The highest strike resistance in the game would be Murmur, also known as the one that's not Whisper and the one that's not Grace. She has innate strike resistance, and then she also gets strike resistance from her master ability. She has a whole bunch of other resistances too, but she is also able to equip Phoenix, but she doesn't get the bonus out of the fire cards because those only apply to fire units. So in terms of other options for VC, we have the Lucia card, which gives strike resistance, but that's only to wind units. So her only other option is the Ogre VC. And the other thing too is that she can't actually equip the mithril armor. So she has to, the best thing that she can equip on herself is Lilyth's TMR. So that gives her a total of 87. So to give an idea of the next highest that isn't fire type, isn't Lilyth or Seymour, the next highest strike resistance in the game is Uldoa, and that's just because she can take advantage of the Lucia card, and she has a built-in 15% just like Lilyth. So when it comes to the third or fourth place, this is basically as high as it goes. So I found this kind of like really interesting, just to see how Lilyth kind of just randomly got all this strike resistance. Okay, so this is the build that I'm kind of running. I decided, at first I actually used Rain, but I decided because the Encounter of Heroes card is actually a magic boost that you get for the party, I decided to throw in Rain. Rain wasn't really working out that well because he still does have that strike weakness. So I kind of just brought in Adelard. Adelard, I gave him even more magic attack power with the Trousseau vision card, and I also gave him the Soul of Thamasa. Minwu is just kind of there. She has a pretty good magic stat with this build, so I thought this was a really interesting build. So at first I wanted Lilyth to have like a lot of movement, so I gave her Kitone's TMR, but it turned out she wasn't really using it, so I kind of just switched to the Summer Sharpshooter. She kind of uses it every so often. And then I gave Minwu Venera's TMR just for speed. She never really cast the buff, but the idea is that she would just cast Hide on herself and, you know, not get targeted. So the standard build here, we use Lilyth with the Mithril Armor, the Flame Tongue, but I think as a substitution, I did like using the Near Pod 158.5 or whatever it's called. And then you do have the option to use the Platinum Helm. I did try the Golden Armor, but that actually slows her down. So Platinum Helm gives you slash resistance, and Silma's TMR also gives you slash resistance. So if you want to add like different resistances to it, those might be some kind of different options that you can go with. But I think I ended up liking the little pod thing a little bit better than just having the strike resistance. Like, the difference between 70 and 70% is not that much, especially when you have the unit resistance. So let's go into a video. I recorded it already, but I kind of just wanted to show how it works. And we're basically, since there really isn't any strike unit, we're basically going to have to hunt Tifa. Tifa is basically the only kind of meta strike unit. I mean, I guess there is Lamiga and like Ziza, but you rarely see those. So we basically are going to go after Tifa. So let's just hop into this, the first battle here. So I kind of lined up Lilyth with Tifa, but I kind of found that after a while, it's better to have Lilyth in the middle. It just kind of works out somehow better that way. So, you know, standard stuff here. We start off with our buffs. We get the fire buff from Minwoo. You know, standard stuff here. But let's see what happens when Lilyth and Tifa sort of get closer to each other. So, of course, Lilyth is going to do some damage. That's fine. That's whatever. We don't really care about the damage that Lilyth is doing. We more so care about how little damage she's going to take. So here we have the reflex, which kind of worked out pretty well. And then Lilyth is just going to come in here and start doing some damage. So let's see how much damage Tifa does onto Lilyth. Pretty much nothing. That's like what, like 1/8? Of course, 2B is going to come in here and do some damage. She missed that first attack, so she didn't have as much AP. But that slash resistance does help a lot. But look at how Lilyth is sustaining right now. With the heal from Minwoo, of course. We're going to get another attack here from Tifa. Pretty much no damage there. You know, fully expect 2B to come here and start doing damage. But at this point, it looks like she's just getting completely overwhelmed. This doesn't seem to be like that great of an evasion build, but there was an evade and there's another evade, so you kind of have to be careful, basically. The wind cast is actually very good, the wind team, so you know, just because we won here doesn't really necessarily mean anything. Okay, so this is going to be the second video, and hopefully I think this is the one that's a little bit better. So here I have Lilyth in the middle. So now actually Adelard, what he's going to do is he's going to cast Protect onto Lilyth. And Minwoo is going to cast Right to the Flame. So Lilyth is just like super powered right now. And the other two, so she's going to come up against Joom and Tifa on the left here. So let's see how this plays out. So, you know, Tifa's got the buff going. Bam, sharpshoot. You know, nothing crazy with the sharpshoot there. Joom comes in. Now let's see what happens with Tifa here. You know, minimal damage there. Joom kind of does some decent damage, but we do have a little bit of that slash resistance. So there we do damage onto Joom. And okay, this is looking bad right now, but watch how this plays out. Little bit of damage onto Lilyth. Joom, since she got hit, she actually lost that AP. This is looking abysmal right now, but you know, don't worry guys, this is gonna be good. Lilyth comes in, does another attack here, reflex, but even if without the reflex, she just wouldn't have taken that much damage. All right, so Minwoo with the heal, sustaining here on the right. 2B is kind of a threat, but she's kind of being distracted over here. Bam, Lilyth just surviving over here, doing her damage. Still taking abuse from Tifa. Doesn't even care about the damage from Tifa. Still alive, still taking hits. Okay, now it's getting a little bit dangerous here. You know, after all that being alone on the left against 2, she's eventually going to go down. Not a problem here. Adelard's still doing pretty well. He takes down Joom one shot. And we kind of just run out of turns here. So I think we would have beaten Tifa there. But I think that actually turned out to be a pretty good one. When this build works, it's actually really good. But let's continue. I think I have one more win here. So let's see how this one plays out. Okay, so this is a little bit different. We have Lucia. Lucia is missile damage, so that is definitely dangerous. But the one thing to know about that is actually that Adelard has missile resist. So if we're able to line up well, I think we can get through this one. So Lilyth, she's gonna move to the right. So that leaves Adelard over here to deal with Lucia. Exactly what we wanted. Adelard even protects himself, so even less damage from Lucia. So we have Lilyth again meeting up with Tifa, and she goes for that big barrage there. Adelard, you know, takes a decent amount of damage, but, you know, he resists some of it, takes down Lucia. 2B is a big threat over here. Lilyth Tifa not so much. She does very minimal damage. We clean up Tifa. We do still have a little bit of slash resist here. So we do survive. Bam. That actually, when it works, and it's actually pretty amazing. However, we have to keep in mind one thing, guys. We are MR units going up against UR units. So the thing with Lilyth here, she is not really a tank. She can't really control the hate. You know, there's a lot of AI issues. And there's one other thing that I found in this next battle. You know, the difference between an MR unit and a UR unit. So even with the crazy resist against Tifa, what's going to happen here is Tifa's going to show why she is a UR unit and why Lilyth is an MR unit. So, okay, you know, Joom is coming in, but here comes Tifa. You know, I guess they're still getting close. Lilyth going to come in here, probably doing AoE. There we go. There's still the evade factor going on. You know, we can get through that, but, you know, if there's too much damage coming from our end, then we're kind of screwed. So here's what we see happen is Tifa actually has a stun. So even though she didn't do much damage, this is a 2-turn stun, which is very debilitating for our Lilyth here. And this one actually has rain in it, so this is when I was first trying. And you can see like all this abuse of Lilyth getting stunned and having to heal her now. It's kind of making it a little bit harder. Tifa comes in, melts Rain because he's 30%, minus 30 on the strike resistance. And at this point, it's just like completely falling apart. So that's kind of there to show you guys that the power of UR units, as amazing as this potential as this build has, it's just not going to work out every single time. And then the one last thing here is kind of the same thing, the potential of a UR unit. So we're looking at Tifa here again. As you can see, she kind of did Saintly Wall. So she is set to the Paladin subjob. So that already spells out bad news. I think we do have slash resistance on this one. However, or maybe unit attack resistance. However, it's just not going to be enough against 3 slashers, 2 of which are pretty high damage dealers, as we get a little bit of lag here. So again, Minwu and Adelard are back here buffing. They're kind of just taking up their turns, just buffing and just getting ready. Tifa's going to come in. She's still going to be using her, you know, strike attacks, the somersault combo. I think that's the one with the stuns. We did get lucky there with the reflex. But now here's another thing too, is that the wind units, the wind teams are actually really good and they have different attack types. So now we have Pierce with Luartha. You know, as before, there goes the slash attack onto Lilyth. So Lilyth is not going to be resisting when she's getting hit by slash attacks. So in addition, before we were talking about Lucia with the missile resist, and then there's also Halloween Little Lila, which is going to completely melt Lilyth. So that's pretty much it, guys. That was just like an experimental build. Obviously, if we had other resources, we might be able to do this a little bit better. Who knows, like maybe with when we get the 2 VC update, maybe we'll be able to do like Vow of Love and another VC. But in terms of equipment, there's only a certain amount of equipment that Lilyth can hold. So it's just not going to be able to work. But when it does work, I think it's actually pretty amazing. If strike was a bigger issue in the meta, maybe this might do better. But for the time being, the meta is just not strike at all. There's just no good strike units. So at most, this is just kind of a fun build. In spirit, I still think it works pretty well. But unless we have like a whole bunch of changes and like buffs to Lilyth, it's not really going to be a consistent type of strategy for you guys to use. But at least it was fun. That's pretty much all I have for you guys today. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed that one. It's kind of a way to kind of get some fun and mileage out of Lilyth. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.